Hello, Homeworthy. I'm Melissa Parks. This is my Chicago home. I would love to show you around. Welcome.
This Christmas, Homeworthy invites you into a season of wonder. Over the next 25 days, we're stepping into homes that sparkle with holiday cheer, where garlands tumble from mantels, ornaments hang like tiny treasures, and every corner comes alive with joy, merriment, and the spirit of the season.
And I don't know how many ornaments are on the tree. Last year I got 1,400 on, and they were made all over the world. There were ones made in America, Poland, Italy, Japan, just a wide variety, and I love them all.
We'll visit homes where traditions are cherished, where beauty is made by hand, and where rituals become memories that last a lifetime.
We make about 400 of these rolls every year, and on Christmas Eve, our family delivers them to certain families within the area, and our kids get to participate in choosing who gets them.
From quiet moments by the fire to happy gatherings around the table, we're celebrating the way the holidays transform our spaces and fill them with magic.
We do quite a dressy table because it's Christmas and it's a party and you want it to feel special, but it's nice to make the table a little bit kind of imperfect, a little bit higgledy-piggledy. I want people to feel at a party in my home as if they're kind of wearing a ball gown but going barefoot. You know, it's that kind of high-low moment, the kind of specialness, but also the coziness of being really comfortable.
So pour something warm, settle in, and join us for Homeworthy's 25 Days of Christmas, a season-long celebration of holiday magic. To watch Homeworthy's entire Christmas collection ad-free, visit homeworthyplus.com or scan the QR code on screen. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, I'm Melissa Parks, also known as McGillicuddy. I'm an antiques and vintage dealer here in Chicago, Illinois. Welcome to my home. I got into vintage and antiques dealing about 16 years ago, and it was really because I have such a small house. And I love vintage and used and thrifted items, and my house was bursting at the seam. And so a friend said, hey, there's a little community flea market down the street. How about you sell some of your stuff? So at the urging of friends, I packed up a bunch of my surplus and headed to this little fair at the campground down the road, and had a very successful show. That was probably about 16, 17 years ago. And after that, the bug bit me, and I started to do other shows in the Chicagoland area. I started at Kane County Flea Market out in St. Charles, Illinois, and then I did Randolph Street Market in downtown Chicago. I did Grays Lake, and then I just got tired and my body could not stand the work anymore, and so I transitioned to selling in a brick and mortar. So I've been doing it for about 15 years, and each year I learn a little bit more about what customers really want and delights them. I love unique, individual, decorative items. Lots of designers use my items in photo shoots, and hotels use my items to decorate their spaces. So it's a joy to be able to connect people with historical items and connect stories to the next story. We're here in our living room, our teeny little living room where a lot of living takes place, and it is a very cheery place this holiday season. And when you walk through the front door, this is what you see, and I call it my George Bailey moment because I had a friend, Kelly Makrens from Instagram, offer to make this for me last year after I posted something on Instagram stories while watching It's a Wonderful Life, and I fell in love with the Merry Christmas sign. And so for the past few months, we've been working on designing this. I should say she's been working on designing this Merry Christmas sign and just getting my approval. And it's just so whimsical the way it kind of hangs, suspends in air. People always want to know about this beaded pipe cleaner garland. It is actually vintage. It is Japanese mercury glass and pipe cleaner So you can find it on eBay. I found some on eBay, thrift stores, flea markets. But I've also had friends on Instagram who have made it themselves. So you can do it yourself if you can't find any. And it just is so much fun. It's kind of crafty looking, but also one of a kind. I like to stick little birds up in the signs just to make kind of a foresty effect, which I think works really well with this large painting that I got. I think it's a backdrop from maybe a theater production. I got it at the flea market. It's such a great story. I had $10 left in my pocket and I found this. And the woman who was selling was actually selling on behalf of her brother, and her brother wasn't there. And I said, I only have $10. She goes, you can take it. And this is probably worth, at least $100, $200. So that was my lucky day, but I love it as a backdrop. It has kind of a cinematic, foresty, Christmassy feel, which is a wonderful backdrop for my bottle brush tree collection. I've been collecting these probably for about 25 years, and it started as all collections do with just one, and now I have no idea, it's too many. I add them every year and it's grown, I don't know, there's probably about 60, 70, I don't know. And they're all varieties. They're made in Japan, and they have lots of them are different, but mercury glass beading and like just some rickrack. Some of them have fruit, and they're just super fun. You can find them on eBay and antique stores. Warehouse 55, where I work, has lots of them. And they run between like 40 all the way up to like 100. I started collecting them when they were like $18 a piece, and you can still find some bargains. Last year I found a whole bunch for cheap. This piece right here is actually a folk art piece, handmade. And if you look closely at it, it's constructed of chicken wire and then also inverted pop cans or Coca-Cola cans, and they're fringed, and then they're stuck on the chicken wire, and then these bulbs were all stuck on there. And then I, of course, had to add some more little doodads to make it truly festive. So my best advice for people looking to start a bottle brush tree collection is to start with one, pay between $30 to $65 for a mid-size. Maybe you can find one for a little bit less for a smaller size. Now we're going to go to this corner of the room. It's such a small house, we have to have a place for our television. My husband would kill me if I said we couldn't have a television. So you just make the most of it. And we put up here this giant clamshell, which usually has alabaster grapes in it, but for the holidays I stuck a bunch of vintage ornaments and then put in some more bottle brush tree. This is actually a vintage, actually an antique feather tree, which is a little bit different than bottle brush. It's actually made out of feathers, and I have so much fun putting little bottle brush tree ornaments and small garland on it. This one is a lot of fun. I got this at an estate sale. It's so wonky. Again, it's handmade and it's feathers and all these weird little ornaments stuck in there. I feel like this represents how I decorate. Just add more and it just looks fun, and I love how it looks. This is actually, I know paper chains are having a moment right now, and I got this one. It's actually fabric, feed sack fabric chain that I layered here. And again, this is something you could totally do on your own. I know I've seen lots of makers on Instagram making them. Some more pipe cleaner garland and some more vintage garland. These two chairs were actually, they're swivel chairs, and they came from one of my best friend. Her husband's mother passed away, and so they sat in my house with just some pretty plain upholstery, and I had them reupholstered in a fabric by Virginia Craft Textiles, and I think they're really festive and fun. Up here is another corner. This has a lot of my collections in it, my regular collections, not much Christmas stuff in there. And when I think of vignettes, I like to think in terms, as I said, of telling a story. And so this is kind of like a little, I don't know what kind of story it's telling, but I started with this cruel bird item, which kind of lays nicely against this antique Chinese tapestry, and I thought, oh, it's kind of a woodland theme, so we're going to build off of that woodland theme as that theme is repeated throughout the house, and put a tree which isn't very woodlandy and another tree. And I think one of the great joys of Christmas is that you can add little baubles to just about everything. This joy sign is actually not a sign, they're little candlesticks, but instead of putting candles in, I just put tiny little vintage ornaments. This is actually a Christmas tree with pins and beads, which anybody could make. This one happens to be vintage, but anybody could make it. This gold pine cone thing was just a regular pine cone shade, and I spray painted it gold so it matched my decor, and then put some antique bird ornaments. I have lots of antique bird ornaments throughout the house. So then over here is our sofa lounging area. This is a Facebook Marketplace sofa that was pretty ugly. It was free. The owner said, you know, if you come and get it now, you can have it for free. Somebody else wants it, but you can have it if you come right now. And so I jumped in the truck, went and bought it, and because it's expensive to reupholster things and I didn't have money at the time, I just put it in the basement and said, someday in the future we'll get it done. And so after about 3 years, we decided to have it recovered, and I picked a stripe, which I've always wanted a striped sofa. I think that they're timeless, even though they're a pattern, and I do love pattern, so it works well. These are actually late 1800s silk embroidered chinoiserie screens that were once together acting as a screen. I separated them, and I thought that it elevated the room a little bit, and they're a really special piece, handmade, really delicate. I love peacocks for some reason. I have a lot throughout my home, and I like that these are peacocks without being really brash and bold. I love to collect antique seascapes. I have some in my bedroom and some in the front porch, but here I have a collection of them, and also another peacock. These are in really lovely old frames and have a little Christmas moment here with a poinsettia. They're kind of old-fashioned, but they remind me of my childhood and my mother always having poinsettias around the house. They feel very nostalgic to me, so I thought that I'd include them in my holiday decor. So now we're gonna walk to the dining space, which is basically with the living space. It's a very open concept home. I love the dining room, even though it's compact and teeny. I got this marble table for $10 at a thrift store. It's probably one of my favorite finds. It's an Italian piece, probably from the 1980s, and I love how narrow it is. I got these chairs at Goodwill for $3.99 a piece, and I keep on thinking of having them recovered again, but for now they work well. So I think of this whole dining room, it was about $25, which is really amazing. And then the vintage chandelier was $40. And somebody said that they thought it looked like a garden hose. Actually, lots of people, when I first put it up, people on Instagram like, it's a garden hose, but I think it is so fabulous. It kind of has a French Art Deco vibe to me, which I think is very fun, and obviously picks up kind of the gold and green tones that I am so fond of. And of course, at Christmas, I can't help myself, and I just go all out with decorating, and even the chandelier. I wanted to continue the forest theme and the whimsical, really over-the-top theme that I'm so fond of. And so I affixed a couple of vintage wreaths to the bottom, and then dangled some old bottle brush garland from the middle, and then put lots of vintage garland throughout, and of course more birds. But it just feels so whimsical, and with Christmas you really can get away with more than usual, and people, I think, feel cheered by it. It feels like a grandma's Christmas, and I think that that's when I've always been my happiest, is at Christmas with my family. So anyway, I try to evoke that when I'm decorating for Christmas. Another poinsettia. I figured I had to keep this kind of calm because everything else in the house is not calm. So over here at the buffet, this is a free dumpster dive. We're going to my son's soccer game, or coming home from his soccer game, and this was on the side of the road, and my husband had to be somewhere. I'm like, I'm sitting on top of this until you can come back with the truck. And so I looked like a crazy person, I'm sure. It was a piece of junk, really. It had really bad painting on top, but the green was there. And of course, green is kind of my signature color. And so I like it. It's tons of storage, which is ideal for a small space, and it's hardworking, and I appreciate that. And to kind of make it a little bit fancier, I like the mix of fancy plus maybe a little bit more pedestrian. I have a selection of Florentine gold mirrors, and I just stack them. That's one way that I kind of maximize my space while also living with collections, is find a way to layer with them. And I do the whole layering again here with my bottle brush wreaths, which again are from the same era as the bottle brush trees. They're from Japan. They come in a variety of colors and sizes, and it just is such a festive little moment. And I don't know if you can see from far away, but I hang all these with fishing line, and so when you're far away it's pretty transparent, but looks like it's kind of floating. I try to use items that are part of my everyday collection, like these alabaster bird baths. So I put my trees in those, and I think it's just a fun little moment. And the alabaster bird baths really echo the alabaster lamps. And I put a little ribbon bunting around the lamps just for a festive touch. Then I put a tree, which is another folk art piece, like the big tree on my piano. It's made out of pop cans also, and painted gold. And I think it's a fun little mix with the portrait beneath. Over here is my Christmas tree, which I love and let my maximalist heart go to work. When my mom was here helping me decorate it, I had probably like 5 bins, and she's like, there's no way that's all gonna fit. I'm like, yes, it will all fit. So I don't know, there are probably over 1,000 ornaments on here, and it's one of my most favorite days of the year, is pulling out the bins and pulling out each ornament and handling them and finding the perfect spot on the tree. I have a variety of vintage ornaments, antique ornaments. My favorite are these beaded ornaments. It started again with just one, and at one point I said, I want to have an entire tree full of vintage beaded ornaments. They're made in Japan. They're vintage, made in Japan pieces, and also Czechoslovakian pieces, and also some Russian beadwork. You can still find Czechoslovakian beadwork today, newer pieces, but on eBay you can find lots of Czechoslovakian beaded and Japanese vintage beaded ornaments if you're looking to find some for yourself. I get some each year, so it's pretty full. I also have a mix of German and Polish and some American glass ornaments and Italian. This Italian ornament is just spectacular. I have 3 of them, and they're super fragile, and I'm always afraid each year that they're gonna break. And then I put some birds throughout, and I have these little candle lights which mimic the 1920s and Victorian era, when they'd actually put candles on trees, which seems like a terrible fire hazard, but I wanted to echo that look. I'm very inspired by those gaudy trees from the Victorian era and all the way up to the 1920s, where they just stick everything on the tree. And this feels like a life-size bottle brush tree to me, which is really the look I'm going for. I use mercury glass vintage beaded garland. This is Japanese again. The bigger pieces are more rare than the smaller ones, and I like the multicolored ones just because then it unifies all the colors from the tree. And it's taken me, goodness, probably 25, 26 years to get all of these garlands to fill it in completely. I found my first in the trash, and I blame Trash Day for starting this collection. Somebody was getting rid of a bunch of ornaments and garland, and I picked up that one right there. I love to use garland over doorways at Christmas. It's a lot, but I love having a lot at Christmas. And this is a really cool garland. It's made out of honeycomb paper, and these little packages are foil and mercury glass beading. And I just put a little bird up there for a little moment. And then over here, you can see that I framed the tree with a collection of antique mirrors, and I did that intentionally to reflect the sparkle from the tree and also to use my antique mirror collection, which goes away once January hits, but I like having them out during the holiday season, and I think that they work even though they're a lot. Here I have a variety of vintage garland, and I'll point them out because people always ask me about them. This is actually foil, candy foil wrapper with mercury glass in between. You can make this yourself. It's really cool, but this is vintage. Then I have some bubblegum wrapper garland that somebody made, and I tried to make some once, and it's painstakingly hard to do. And then some more honeycomb and just gaudy garland, and I just think it's so wonderful. My packages under my tree are made from vintage wrapping paper that I had custom tinted to fit my color palette, and I really love decorating presents. I blame this on my mother, but I get vintage millinery flowers and velvet ribbon and vintage birds and some feathers, and it just makes each package look bespoke and special, and like what they're getting is going to be special as well. Lots of people say, I wouldn't want to open it, and that's kind of the goal, is like the packaging should be as special as that which is inside. So I think wrapping presents is probably the most fun you can have during the holiday season. We live in a 1920s Chicago bungalow, and it is a teeny little house. The square footage is about 1,000 square feet, and we found it when I was going to graduate school at Loyola University and my husband was working out in the suburbs, and it was halfway in between. And I think I always imagined this just being our starter house, and it's not my dream house by any stretch of the imagination, but then we got rooted in our community and have friends here, and so we have stayed, and frankly it's really expensive to move to a bigger house, so we are making do with what we have. When we moved in, it was really bad. There were ugly blinds around the windows, Berber carpet on the floor. It was just ugly. The kitchen was especially horrible. It had probably about 5 different types of wallpaper, a faux brick, plasticky looking wallpaper, and a daisy orange, yellow and brown wallpaper on the ceiling, and turquoise cabinets, if you can imagine, and ugly brown stuff. It was a hot mess. So I'm particularly proud of the kitchen, which we've actually had like it is for about 20 years. We haven't remodeled for where the toilet is, and again, it was just so strange the things that they did. They had yellow tile all the way up. They had cupboards actually in the shower, which I can't fathom why they would put cupboards in a wet area, but they did have that, and turquoise appliances and sinks. It was horrible. So we've pretty much touched every corner, with paint, redid the hardwood floors. And of course, because I love to decorate, I've added a lot of decorative touches over the years. I'm antsy. My husband says I'm discontent, but I just think I have a creative spirit and want things to always be fresh and interesting. And now we're gonna go into the kitchen. And this is one room that we remodeled after living here a couple years, and I think it's stood the test of time. Of course, I'd like some open shelving and have it a little bit more furniture-y looking, but for this house, it feels like it's okay. And it gives me ample space to show off my McCoy pottery collection that I've been collecting for, 27, 28 years. It was kind of accidental when we were building the kitchen. My husband was gonna put cabinets up there, and he didn't put them on quick enough, so I started to put stuff up there. Before long, they were all filled up, and he never put cabinet doors on them. So now it's just a place to display my pottery collection, and I actually think that it looks best at Christmas because of the green. It's one of my favorite collections, and something that I always look for now, and as a collector you have to limit yourself. So now that I have so much, I'm now looking for only rare pieces, perfect pieces, and pieces that are super cheap and I just have to rescue, because as you can see, not much more can fit up there. I have a trio of these brass lotus lights. They are mid-century, and this is probably my favorite thing in the kitchen and one of my best finds ever. I was out in Bremerton, Washington. My parents have a boat and we were out there and we were moored there, and there was this itty bitty little flea market that I had to go to. And so we went, and I saw one of these on the floor. I'm like, oh, I love them. And I think there were two, and I was looking for pendant lights for the kitchen. And she said, oh, I actually have a big one too down here. And so I looked down and there's the big one, and then there was actually a fourth one that I have someplace else. And so I got all of them for $150, which is an incredible price because they can be like $1,400, $1,500, sometimes $2,800 a piece. So $150 for four was an incredible deal, and I love them. I think that they add both a contemporary feel, but also with the brass, kind of an old world feel as well. I use this moment also to decorate for Christmas. I think that this is such a fun way to display these holiday picks. They're vintage, to put them in a peacock. It looks like the peacock is fanning its feathers, which makes for a fun moment, and some of my beaded tree collections with some brass deer. I have just some more McCoy pottery, but in the form of pitchers where I hold utensils. I also collect shell utensils, shell handles, mother of pearl handled items, and then there's some utilitarian stuff because this is a kitchen. I think a nice lamp warms up the space in a kitchen, makes it feel a little bit more lived in. And then this cart is overflow for more of my McCoy pottery collection and bowls. And we actually do use the bowls frequently for salads and baking and for anything that needs a bowl. But I probably don't need like 30 of them. So of course, this is just a collector's moment because I love more. I had this wallpaper made recently. I had an antique fabric that I really loved. I didn't know what to do in here, and I loved the fabric. It was a little bit too light blue though, so I took it to a designer, had her scan it in, and then color corrected it so that it had a richer tone. And I think it's fun. I went all the way around the kitchen, and it just envelops you and makes you feel cozy. It may be a little much for some people. My husband certainly thought it was a lot because he had to install it, and my son did too, and they did not have fun doing that. It's really hard to define your style. I think every person who loves decorating never knows exactly how to define their style, and eclectic decor feels so general. And so I've landed kind of on folklore maximalism because a lot of my pieces have kind of a folky, storied past. I love individual items with a handmade touch, and I love stuff. So I'm definitely a maximalist and a collector. And if you'll see throughout the house, I have tons and tons of collections at Christmas as well as in my non-Christmas home, which you won't see as much of today. I love collections, which means you have to find a way to live with collections so that they don't overwhelm you. And so I've become really strategic about how I layer things, like I layer my mirrors and group like things together, and thinking in terms of color story and items that relate and tell a story together. I love vignetting and creating moments that tell that story and make you feel something. I'm very big into narrative style. So that's kind of how it all evolved, having to live with my collections and figuring out how to live with them in such a small footprint, and with, a family, my husband and son, they need a place to put their drink and to kick up their feet as well. So it can't be tchotchke after tchotchke after tchotchke after tchotchke. And I don't even like that word because I don't think that they're tchotchkes. I think they're delicious little storied finds. So this is my hallway, and it has been hand painted by my son's girlfriend. She spent hours upon hours hand painting this. I had a design in mind that I wanted, and she executed it for me, which is really wonderful because I don't draw, I don't paint, but I have a vision. And so she spent time doing this for me. And I love this moment because it's a little jewel of a room. I think when you have a small house, you got to make the most of it and create these little moments, and it connects the bedrooms and the bedroom area of the house with the rest of the house. So they had to speak to each other. So I picked a blue-green and then a deeper kind of olivey green, which in this light, you can't really tell. It looks a little bit different, but it really is a fun, whimsical moment. And again, maximalist. And in the hallway, I have hung my collection of 60 beaded bell ornaments. And I guess this is my nod to George Bailey as well. You know, every time a bell rings, angel gets its wings. And so I have lots of bells in here. Again, started collecting probably about 27 years ago and added one by one. And I've been so fortunate. People from Instagram have sent me pieces to add to my collection. So now I think I'm about up to 60. I counted them the other day, and they're just a fun, enchanting thing to have. It's a very enchanting moment. And if you're super tall, you're going to bump your head, but that's okay. When we have our caroling party every year, we pack like 40 people in this house, which is insane. And I always get stressed out about it because our house is so small, and it ends up being such a wonderful time. People love being packed in together. And we actually come in the hallway. There's overflow in the hallway because there's just not enough room. And last year we did an Instagram reel where we all jumped in by the bells. It was like having your own personal photo booth, and it's just so much fun. So I think my big advice is, if you have a small house, don't let it limit the joy that you bring into it, because people don't really care about the size. They care about the feeling that you create. And you can do that with or without decorations, but certainly the decorations help, I think, create that magical, cozy feeling. Now we're going to head into our bathroom. So here we are in our bathroom. As you can tell, I love green. I've already said it's my signature color, and this is a Huga and West print that I got about 9 years ago. I don't even know if they have it anymore, but I guess that's a sign that I really like it if I still have it 9 years later. And it's a pattern that can really elevate a small space, especially because I have white wainscoting below, so it doesn't overwhelm the space. I have a collection here of vintage doodads to add a little festive spirit mixed in with some of my vintage art. I have some nude paintings in here. I collect nude paintings, much to my husband's dismay. I think these are tasteful, and they belong in a bathroom, I think. And then I have some more holiday decor in the window, more bottle brush trees. I have a collection of brass peacocks, which currently aren't out. I have one right there. Put a little wreath on them to get them in the holiday mood. I have this Louis Philippe mirror that I purchased at Warehouse 55, and it's just the perfect size there, and it was such a bargain. Sometimes those mirrors can be hundreds of dollars. And then I put one of these Dresden brass wreaths in front of it, which now are quite expensive. They're about, gosh, $200, $150. They're ridiculously expensive, but I've never spent more than $20. And then I elevated it or added my touch and added some ribbon, and I like how it's suspended there in front of the mirror. My design tip for people out there, especially people immersed in the Instagram world where we see so many wonderful and aspirational and inspiring homes, is to really be true to yourself and to embrace who you are in your decorating and not worry about what other people are going to think about you. Follow your heart, follow the colors that delight you, follow the patterns that delight you. Embrace a little bit of imperfection along the way, because none of us are perfect and none of our homes are perfect. So now we're in my home office, which is also really a place where I store a lot of the items that I'm going to be selling at my space at Warehouse 55, and I rotate items in and out, and they end up kind of leaning in a way that feels very loose and artistic, and I find inspiration by all the antique items that I surround myself with. This here is an old pier mirror that I found at an estate sale. It was really quite cheap. I think it was $100. And then later I found this platform at a flea market, and typically these are on platforms. So these didn't come together, but they ended up coming together, which was kind of serendipitous. And of course, more Christmas trees. Every room has a Christmas tree. And then I have these built-in bookcases, not for books, because unfortunately I prefer doodads over books. I have one of my favorite collections that you've seen in other rooms is this Alabaster bird bath collection. And I just stack them, and I think they look super fun. And I also collect beaded flowers, French beaded flowers, and just a beaded whimsy, Iroquois beaded whimsy. I also have a stack of antique textiles, and then down here I have some memory ware, which I also collect. So this becomes, and tramp art up here is also something that I collect. So this becomes a space where a lot of my collections end up, and it's always rotating, and I'm always fiddling around because it's super fun. This here is actually a sofa bed. It was the sofa that was in my other room before the striped sofa came in. And it's a fairly ugly sofa, but I've covered it with an antique textile and pillows, and it's cozy. And it's actually a pull-out sofa so that when we have guests, there's a place for them to sleep. And sometimes they just sleep on the sofa because it is kind of a squishy, worn-in sofa, which really feels good. Got this painting at a flea market a couple years ago, and this is such a great story. There were two very old paintings, and the guy didn't know what he had. He was a junk dealer. He got junk out of people's houses and sold it. And I saw them, they were buried underneath the table. And so I offered him more than most people at that flea market would offer him. I think I paid $80 for two of them. And this one by itself would be, hundreds of dollars. And lots of people really love it. So anyway, I sold the other, kept this one, but it's one of those things where you just have to look high and look low and be persistent in the hunt for things, and then you're rewarded with something truly special. I put this brass Merry Christmas sign up here just to add some festive touches and some more bubblegum wrapper. This tapestry is actually meant to hang on a wall. Instead, I used it as a layer on the sofa. I like layering patterns and textures, and this has a bit of that old world feel that I like to echo throughout the space. Over here I have more collections, more shell art and beaded flowers, and also more alabaster bird baths, and just all my favorite collections. And then this lucite bust, which I couldn't find a place for, but I think she looks kind of fun in here. She's so heavy. I got her when I was in Pennsylvania sourcing for my space, and she was supposed to go to the store, and somehow she has not made her way there yet because I really love her. And my mom put a little ornament in her hair around her bun, which I think looks really cute. This piece right here is a crewel tapestry piece that I got when I was in Pennsylvania, and it has so much texture, and I love the length of it, how it fills up this corner. And I also collect oversized pencils and, scissors, pencils, just weird stuff. I have just artwork that I don't have room for layered here, but I still find inspiring. This here is my desk, where usually I have a computer set up, but today I took it out, and I just have a lot of handmade items here that are classified probably as folk art. This penny ship is really cool. There are pennies, probably I think $5 worth of pennies I counted one time, grouted onto this wooden ship, and it's just a really fun, unique, one-of-a-kind item. I got this leather folk art frame from Florence, Italy last year, and it's just incredible. I think it's from the 1700s, and just to think of the time that it must have taken somebody to cut out the leather fabric and then also mold these little flowers is just really incredible. This here is it's a shadow box of paper flowers. I really love anything handmade, again for the same reason. I love that leather piece, and the penny is just, who would take time to do that. I think it's incredible that somebody had a vision to do it first of all, and then spent the time getting every piece just right to make it actually look like real flowers. And then more beaded flowers. This is a bottle cap chain, another piece of folk art. This Santa is an old little piece, but he's kind of goofy looking. And this is actually a mother of pearl shade that a friend gave to me. And then this is a micro mosaic mirror, Italian, and then some more festive touches, and another nude, because you got to have nude, and because I need to know where I am all the time. I put an office sign up there because I wouldn't know otherwise. So that is my office. And now we're in our bedroom, and this is the master bedroom, which is really laughable. It's not even big enough to hold a queen-size bed. I guess we could, but we need a nightstand. So this is a full-size bed, and everybody asks me, how do you and your husband sleep in a full-size bed? And I guess because we've been doing it for almost 28 years, you just figure it out. It's a brass bed with mother of pearl inlay here. And then I found this really old tapestry on Facebook Marketplace from actually somebody who follows me on Instagram. I didn't know that she did, and when I went to pick it up, it came from her house that she was moving out of, so I'm so happy that I'm giving it another life. I think it looks dramatic for such a small space. These Italian Florentine lamps I found last year after I came back from Florence, and I was so inspired by Italy and all the decorative arts, and I found this pair, and it was one of those instances where I asked if they were available and the guy ghosted me. He said they were, and then he ghosted me. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not gonna get those lamps. And then eventually he got back to me, and I was so happy because they are just so unusual. They have little swans around them, hand-painted gold. And then I put these anthropology shades, marbled shades, which I've had for years, but the marbling technique is just so Italian. They do lots of marbling on paper in Italy. It's actually where it all started, and so I think it actually is a nice combination. These bedside stands I picked up at an auction house. I actually had 2 other bedside stands, and I asked the man who ran the auction house if he just wanted to swap, which he did. So I got these, and I gave him my old ones, and they couldn't really be a more perfect size for this small room. Over here is an old inlaid dresser that I got at a thrift store, and the detail on it is just really lovely, even though it's a little bit dinged up. I love the different shades of wood in the inlay. And on top of it is another Louis Philippe mirror, and this one is huge. And this was another flea market find at the same flea market where I found that painting in my office. And the back was facing me when I was going down the aisle, and I saw the old wooden back, and I'm like, I think that's something. And I turned it around, and it was a very old Louis Philippe mirror, and it had its original tag from France, so I knew it was genuine. And it's over 30 pounds, and I couldn't take a cart in to retrieve it and take it home, so I was like lugging it inch by inch through the market. Here I have these, I think these are Italian toll pieces that are religious, and I have this peace sign that I got at a flea market. It's on old wood. They're old, it's old typography, old letters, and then some really gaudy garland and a vintage chenille ornament. And then over here is my seascape wall, which I love. I lived on the Oregon coast during my summers and when I was in college, and they're just some of the happiest days of my life. And so at some point I had one seascape wall and one seascape painting, and now I have quite a few, and I love that every morning when I wake up, that's the first thing I see, and every night when I go to sleep, it's the last thing I see. And I have a couple of oddball pieces in there, which I think kind of adds some whimsy to it. I have this Winter's Tale, the Faulkner School Gymnasium, May 13th, 1916. So it's an old poster for a Shakespeare performance. It must be a high school performance. And I got a master's in English literature, so it kind of speaks to that part of my history. Then here is a mirror, which is actually a two-way mirror, and there's a TV behind it. My husband came home one day and said, I want a TV. I'm like, that sounds good, until I saw what size TV he was getting. It was this huge TV, and it was just a huge black box. It was before they had, you know, pretty TVs that you could put frame TVs. And so I said, okay, we got to figure out something. So he cut out a hole in the wall, recessed the TV, and then we put in a two-way mirror. So when you turn it on, you can still watch TV. And then when it's off, you would never know that there's a TV there. So that's a fun little hack. Bye, Homeworthy. It was so lovely showing you around, but I think I need to go hang some more garland.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.